I'm going to talk about negative positive space. Negative positive space can be a dominant aspect of good design. When handled correctly, it can turn an average design into a wow piece. Negative space can be an outstanding tool in creating visual excitement because it doesn't rely on subject matter. When people first become involved in the visual arts, subject matter, which is the positive space, is often seen as the most important part of a composition. Sometimes this is taken to such an extreme that the artist will completely omit a background so as to avoid resolving the negative space of the composition. When working with negative space, consider the shape, square, rectangle, whatever, of your picture plane, as well as the silhouette of the positive space. Worked simultaneously, the negative and positive spaces become integrated and critical in creating compositional tension or harmony. Negative positive space has a shared edge. The edge is the place where two things meet, for example, where the sky meets the ground. The edge or line of separation is between the shapes, two shapes, or a space in a shape. So in this example here of this fashion photo from, I believe, the 50s, the model and the silhouette of that model, this model is the positive space, and the rest back here is the negative space. So there's three different types of negative positive space: clearly defined, integrated, and ambiguous. The subject, clearly defined negative positive space. The subject is clearly defined from the background. The viewer has no difficulty whatsoever telling what the positive shape is from the negative shape. Please note that the term clearly defined is one that I use. I find it easier to clarify the differences between the different types of negative positive spaces rather than simply calling it negative positive space, which is often how it's referred to in textbooks. So let's take a moment and look at this older fashioned photo here. We have three models, and they are our positive space, and this fencing in the background is the negative space, and you have absolutely no difficulty telling one from the other. Another fashion shot from the, I believe, the 50s. Clearly defined, we can tell the model from the background, the positive from the negative. A beautiful woodcut. Now for the next type of negative positive space, you do need to know this piece of information, and it's about visual information. To understand how integrated negative positive space works, you need to understand this concept. This rule states that the human eye needs to have enough visual information for the brain to figure out what the image is. So what's the shape that you see over to your right? Well, I hope you said triangle. Now, there was enough visual information between these three dots for your brain to form that triangle. But when we remove one of the circles, an important part of the visual information is gone, making it so that the viewer can no longer see that triangle. So this is an example of what happens when there isn't enough visual information. So let's look at integrated negative positive space. Integrated is parts of something are merging. So parts of the background or the negative space seem to be merging into the positive space, but we have enough visual information to still understand what's going on in the design. So if you look at this piece over here, this is a photo of the famous jazz singer Billie Holiday, and we know that her hair is going back into this area here. but because it's such a dark negative space, it's actually merging in or integrating. Same thing with this area here. We know that this is, her body is here, but because it's so dark, it's beginning to integrate. But there's still enough visual information for us to tell that this is a singer, or that this is a person. Now, whenever I teach the fundamentals of design, I like to talk about how we perceive things on an unconscious level. And when people see integrated negative positive space, it tends to, words that tend to be associated with it, mysterious or uncertain, foggy, okay? And as I always will say, these are not necessarily the only words that can be associated with it, but these are a good start. Here's another piece. I believe this is a print of a woman who is doing embroidery. Kind of difficult to tell what she's doing, but we know she's doing something with her hands. And a great example of integrated negative positive space. For example, the back of the head. We've got enough visual information here that we can make out that this should be the back of her head. Same thing with the arms here. We can see part of the hands and a little bit of the wrist area very vaguely, but we can imply the rest of that arm. So there's enough visual information there for us to tell what that is. This is a nice kind of example of kind of a mysterious feeling too, coming from the integrated negative positive space, or one of the elements of that is contributing to it. Another example of integrated negative positive space. Now, the last of the three that I like to talk about is ambiguous negative positive space. In ambiguous negative positive space, the viewer is unable to distinguish which is the negative space and which is the positive space. This type of negative positive space is more commonly found in fine arts or in wallpaper design or fabric design. Feelings that can be associated with ambiguous negative positive space on an unconscious level: chaos, this looks like a fairly chaotic piece here, motion, high energy, uneasiness. Here's another example. Now, one thing that I don't necessarily teach, but I want to draw to your attention is partial ambiguous negative positive spaces. In a partial ambiguous negative positive space, only a section of the negative positive space is ambiguous. In the image below, the center section between the black and white birds and the plots of fields are becoming ambiguous. When we look at either side of the piece, it's pretty clear what's going on, but we start to get an ambiguous area in here. One place that you will see that done is in logo design. The logo design in the area is an area where designers use this. The FedEx logo is famous for its negative space with the arrow. Okay, so that's another area. And for those of you who will study logo design, this will probably be something that you will spend some time with.